Hey everyone, and welcome to Found Friday. It is a muggy July day here in Dallas, but Stuart is luckily up on, I believe, the Carolina coast. So we've got a special guest joining us this week. We've got Stuart Butler from Fuel Interactive. So Stuart, I'm actually going to turn it over to you and let you introduce both yourself and a little bit about what Fuel does, so that people have some context for why we're getting into today's conversation.
Great, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you having me. Yeah, we're in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, so it's unseasonably a little cool here for this time of year. It's about 80 degrees, and humidity is pretty high, so it's a little bit muggy, but not too bad. But I'm Stuart Butler. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Fuel Interactive. I've been with the company about 13 years. Started out actually as a cold fusion developer, so I'm one of those rare kind of client-facing people that actually understands the technical side, which is kind of fun. I have a background education in rocket science. My undergrad degree was physics with space science and systems. So they literally pull out the rocket scientist card sometimes to say it does take a rocket scientist. But Fuel we're a digital agency, been around under a couple of different names for about 20 years. We focus on the travel, hospitality industry, and online retail. So dig real deep in websites that convert consumers to real money. So really heavy into analytics and things like that.
Awesome. So one of the ways we kind of got started on this is, because you guys are into analytics and website stuff, and I obviously love analytics and website stuff. GinzaMetrics is an SEO and marketing strategy analytics platform. We were talking a lot about kind of how you guys are handling this broad array of expertise that you have, and how this kind of has continued to evolve across a number of different things. So when we were chatting earlier this week, I think we had a lot of interesting kind of tangents of conversation around what exactly the agency life means today, and how to deal with what all clients are requesting. So I think one of the first things we wanted to chat about today was really what kinds of tools are you guys using to manage not just projects, but analytics, to manage client expectations, and what are you guys using, and how is that working so far?
Yeah, I mean it's really challenging, and it becomes more challenging every year because it feels like the number of tools we use is increasing exponentially. You know, when I started 13 plus years ago, I had 2 or 3 tools. We had a central project management system and an IDE to edit websites and a web browser, and that was about it. But now, we've got tools like Ginza that, for SEO, and we've got specific website analytics tools, and call tracking tools like Navis, and then 1,000 internal communication tools. So it's complicated. I think the biggest challenge that a lot of folks are facing today is how to integrate these tools. And you hear a lot of buzz about big data from the client side and the marketing side, but I think a lot of people are missing the point that you need to use that big data internally at the agency side to make sure that things aren't dropping through the cracks, that your analytics from the website and the call tracking and SEO and pay-per-click and email marketing are all talking together to form a centralized strategy. So a lot of times agencies have set themselves up in silos where email doesn't, the email department doesn't talk to the SEO department, and yet they're so intertwined. And then social might be sitting out here in another silo, and getting that communication going is a real challenge. So, what we do, there are a couple of different things. One is we try to break down those silos and cross-train people, so we don't have, this is an SEO guy, this is a PPC guy, this is an email guy. We actually cross-train them across all those disciplines, so they're at least familiar enough with it, even if they're not working on it on a daily basis. And
I love what you said about. Sorry, I love what you said about understanding that there is a relationship between email and SEO and social, and it's something that I preach a lot. Is that if you've got an email campaign, especially if you're testing subject lines, and doing some other email testing, if you find out that people are opening and really gravitating towards a particular set of subject lines or particular topic usage, that is obviously something that you should be leveraging in SEO value. So, I mean, I think that there's just so much, like you said, cross-pollination, and it's great to hear that you guys are focusing on making sure that people have, if not a rich understanding of every discipline, at least enough of an understanding to know that maybe on this campaign or maybe on this project we should be including this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, you never know when a moment of insight is going to come from one department that influences another group, and things like verbiage and testing apply, especially messaging applies across every channel that you're distributing content. So knowing what those triggers are that impact, and then not only that, but following it through all the way to conversion and revenue and profit for the business that you're representing, because a lot of people say email, what they'll do is they'll get stuck on the metrics that look, they're easy to understand on the surface, like open rate and click-through rate, and those are fine and good metrics and good indicators of the performance, but unless you're tracking it all the way through to how many phone calls did it generate, how much revenue did it generate, then they can be misleading, because you might have a subject line that works really well at creating interest, but it's not relevant enough to the offering, so the conversion rate once you get to the site is so small that it's actually not making as much profit. So there's a balance there between trying to get those surface level metrics to look good versus what's actually good for business.
Well, and one of the things you and I were talking about that that kind of goes exactly with that, which is this idea that you really have to track something through all the way to the end, because everybody's end business goal is making money, right? Like you have to generate revenue, and to generate revenue, you have to generate conversions, no matter what a conversion means to you. And so, because of that issue, sometimes what we find, and I'm sure you guys are seeing this too, is that whoever has the control over, let's say, like the email open rate and click-through rate actually doesn't see or have anything to do with final conversion or revenue. And so a lot of times they may not even be seeing this data. All they're doing is reporting in on these numbers. And they're like, well, our department's doing our job. Right. We got great open rate, great click-through rate, and then further down the line, maybe an inside salesperson or a closing sales guy is saying, well, we're not generating enough revenue, and maybe the email marketing team is like, well, we're sending you plenty of leads. And so there's always this push and pull, right? And it's because they're not getting this end-to-end spectrum of really understanding that.
Yeah, and I think you hit on what I believe is going to be kind of where analytics is going, because we do have a lot of siloed tools right now that provide valuable data and for a specific niche and a specific purpose, but from a top-level business strategy perspective, no one's really solved the problem of bringing all that together and from all these sources and making it actionable. There are some tools out there that can bring it together and show some pretty reports, but to actually give you the insight into what it means to your business and what decisions to make from it, it's a challenge. And what we've started doing is creating proprietary dashboards to try to help us to do that, because right now it's very, very manual. We're having to look in multiple places or pull it into one place and then spend hours and hours, and it takes a lot of time to really dig through and understand the data. So I think that the business intelligence side of analytics is probably where it's heading in the next 5 years.
Well, since you're, let's jump on that a little bit. I did BI in a former life, and it's a really complicated space, right? Because it means you really have to have access to all of the analytics, and that people have to be recording and reporting on it correctly.
Yep.
So you have to make sure that there's not some level of human error, which, you mentioned early on, right, that there's more and more tools. And with that comes some good stuff, because it means you can potentially get more data and more insights, but I mean sometimes more data, more problems, right? Because it's really anybody who knows about statistics and science knows that you can make numbers say whatever you want them to say. You can spin numbers in a million different directions.
Right.
For you guys, do you feel like having more tools is helping you, or do you guys have more tools because clients are kind of demanding these additional tools? I mean, do you wish it was kind of simpler?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am a big fan of simple is better in a lot of cases. And I think the key is knowing when it's appropriate to use each of the tools and how to use those tools. And we're in the process right now internally of migrating our entire project management system. We've been on this platform for about 10 years, and it's it's been heavily customized to do things the way we want to do things. And we've kind of stepped back and said, well, you know what? Why are we forcing the system to work for us? Whereas, you know, a lot of systems are set up and very efficient and work really well. So we're actually migrating to a new platform, and we're literally going through process by process and saying, well, why don't we adapt our behavior to work with the tool versus the other way? It's kind of a chicken and an egg thing, because we feel like we're going to ultimately get better data, like you said. We're going to get more efficient by using the tool the way it was intended to be used. And that it takes time and it takes money of training to do that, but we feel like it's the right investment, because right now our current tool does exactly what I want it to do, the way I think in my head I want it to happen. But there are challenges, and not everyone thinks the way I do, you know. So I think what we're trying to do is just change our philosophy and say, all right, this tool works this way. That's how we're going to work. There'll be some trade-offs, but we feel like that's the right approach for us.
So let's talk about what that kind of means, because you brought up client reporting, and that's a really big aspect of any agency thing. And when you and I were chatting earlier this week, one of the things you were talking about was, you don't want to just spend so much time doing reporting and not actually doing the thing that you're reporting on, right? And so there's always some give and take. So tell me a little bit about how you handle reporting to clients. I'm sure a lot of clients are probably very different in their reporting needs.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a standardized report system that you use, or is it you have all these different tools and it's somebody's job to kind of cobble all these different things together on a weekly, daily, monthly basis?
Yeah, well, philosophically, we believe that the report itself should be as automated as possible. So the data to look pretty and be able to be digested, that should be automated. Always. It isn't 100% right now, but we're always striving for that. So, we use a lot of different tools from, Omniture Catalyst, Google Analytics, the AdWords backend. There's a lot of tools. So wherever possible that they have an API, we've either found a tool or created a tool that will pull that out and put it into a nicely formatted report that makes sense for our clients. Because, oftentimes the default reports don't really give the information that our clients are looking for. And what we found is we kind of got two types of client. We've got the service level analytics client that really what they want to know is that things are going well, and if there's an anomaly or something that's awry, they want to know about it, right? And so those, we don't have to spend a whole lot of man hours really pouring through the data. We can set up benchmarks and thresholds to trigger if there's a problem. And so a lot of that's just automated, pushing to them, and we may have a 30-minute a month discussion on it. And then on the other side, we've got clients that are high-level data users, and they want to improve every single day and learn from their mistakes and their successes. So, we've got literally clients that will have 2 or 3 analysts sitting in a 2-3 hour meeting every week, just pouring through numbers and trying to make sense of it. And that obviously from a cost perspective can add up, because that's a lot of time, but the insight you can gain from collaborating with the business and the agency and really discussing what the data means and trying to act upon it, that's really powerful. And then we can apply that knowledge across the agency to other clients too.
I think that you touch on a really interesting point about a couple of things. One, I love automated reporting whenever possible. We're big fans of that at Ginza, because there is so much human capital that's spent on aggregation of things that actually could be automated, and that's brain power that could be used towards something that only an actual live human could do.
Right.
Then there's also this aspect of training people to not just take a report that says X click-through rate, X open rate, or whatever the statistics are, but how do you take that data and apply it to creating something better, doing something differently, optimizing something further that's either in market still or doing it better next time, right? And so I think that that's a huge part of the employee training experience and the agency working with client experiences. It's the agency's job to not only train its own people how to make things better, but to also help kind of continue that education with the client, because they're coming to you as an expert. So it's not, I just sent you this information and now it just goes and sits on somebody's desk. Like, okay, well, file that report away, and then we're just going to start this next campaign and not learn anything from the last ones. So, I'd love to know kind of how you guys work with your internal people to make sure that they're learning that stuff, because we talked earlier this week about like just training people is very difficult.
Yeah, so I think it comes back to a lot of problems in business come down to communication, and this is one of them. So to me, it's about making sure that you can share that knowledge, any gain knowledge in the collaboration on the data, that gets disseminated throughout the organization, because you never know whether it's going to be a low-level engineer or the head of marketing that's going to see and get an insight into that data that they hadn't thought about before, and it's going to change the direction that they head. So I think making sure that your company is set up in a collaborative sharing environment so that information does get shared, but so that it's just in a way that it's not just noise. It has to be presented in a way that it gets people pay attention to it. One of the things we do here at Fuel is, and we've kind of, I haven't been around in the office for about 3 or 4 weeks, and we haven't had them for a little while, but we try to do a weekly kind of like a lunch and learn. We call it FU, for Fuel University. And what we do is, if you've learned something interesting or had a challenge or success, then any employee can sign up, and they basically do, it's like a little TED Talk to the entire company, and we do it on a Thursday lunchtime. So you can share like these insights that you get, and then allow that conversation to happen with people that really aren't even invested in that client or that particular department. So it's just an opportunity for people from different areas of the company to get involved and understand and contribute.
I love that.
It's been really successful.
Do you guys have trouble motivating people to want to get up and do the actual speaking? I know that in past lives, I've worked with companies where we tried to implement things like that, and one of the things that would happen is you tend to get some of the same couple of people who are willing to speak every week, and then you've really got to kind of like roust everybody else out and like drag them along a little bit to doing their presentation. Do you guys see like really good participation throughout the agency, or do you have kind of like a round robin, like Russian roulette style, like you get picked that week and it's up to you?
Now, we've kind of experimented back and forth. What's surprising to me is some of the ones I've learned the most from and enjoyed the most are the folks that have been really reluctant to do it. A lot of times the folks that think they're really good at presenting, really, they really don't do as good a job as they think they do. So, we really try to encourage everyone to do it. There's a couple of cases where we've actually incentivized folks to do it. We've tied it to their performance evaluation and said, okay, by this date, we want you to have done these many online lessons and done at least one FU and this many blog posts, and if you do, then there might be a bump in salary or some kind of incentive related to that. So in cases where we know there's knowledge there that we really want them to share and they're just a little apprehensive, we can kind of nudge them a little bit, but overall we try to create a culture of family and friendliness where everyone's really comfortable with each other. So it hasn't been that much of a problem. If we're talking about it frequently, then we get enough volunteers. Like in the last few months, we probably haven't been talking about it as much, so the volunteers have died down a little bit. So we'll probably get it started again here.
I always wonder how much clients would want to know about some of these things. I mean, I'm sure some of it is stuff that can't be shared with them, like internal struggles and things like that. But I always wonder if there's like lessons we've learned over the last like quarter or 6 months or year or whatever that they would find interesting, right? Because it means that they know that you're investing in your people and that you're investing in like really learning stuff from your experience with them. I know that whenever I've been on the client side as opposed to the agency side, I want to know that somebody is invested in like learning about my industry or is keeping on top of that. And I think industry learning is a real challenge for a lot of people, especially when you're working on clients across different industries. And I think that's also part of why you see some specialization in agencies, right? Like once somebody has experience in hospitality, they're more likely to attract other hospitality clients because they know that the people there already know about it, right? Do you guys do you actively only seek out clients kind of in a specific industry, or are you open to anything and this just seems to be kind of your wheelhouse?
It's funny. It's interesting time, and we actually are in the process of specializing into hospitality a lot more because historically we haven't been closed to other industries. We haven't really sought after other industries, but what we've really found is, what we do really, really well for hospitality and e-commerce. When it's in an industry, say like healthcare or real estate or folks that maybe are trying to get leads, or there's not a real online transaction, our expertise doesn't, I mean, there's certain things we can certainly drive traffic and analyze things, but what we do that works really well for online transactions doesn't always work well when we're dealing with different industries. So we feel like our time is better spent and our expertise is more valuable if we're focused on those types of industries that we know really, really well. So yeah, I think it's a natural for folks to specialize, and I really think it's a challenge for agencies that don't, because there's so much about what we do is inherent in that industry and is unique to that industry that I think you can struggle sometimes if you try to be all things to all people. So I know we have in the past, which is why we've gotten more selective.
I know, and one of the things that I've seen large agencies do, I mean, this is definitely a resource situation, is, they'll have different sectors within the agency.
Yeah,
So this is,
yeah,
like food and beverage or sports or hospitality or, whatever it may be. And then I think what happens with that is people will get exciting clients in one area or another. And, at agency, there's always this kind of feeling of burnout or wanting
hmm,
to, work on the new hot thing. And so people will want to switch like what group they're part of. And I think that
yeah,
that can do two things. I think it can be very refreshing
hmm,
for an employee that may have been around for a long time and needs a new challenge. But I think it also creates some hesitancy in terms of the client, because the client's like, well, I don't know if you're going to trade my team, right?
yeah,
And that's really difficult. One of the things that I know pretty much all clients worry about is team turnover and
yeah.
kind of consistency. So one of the things I want to ask you and cover is, what are the top challenges that you guys experience with clients just kind of on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the clients that we have the most challenges with are the ones where expectations have not been set appropriately, and some of that's on education, some of it's communication, but, the world that we live in today is so complex, and they're getting inundated with information from 1,000 different sources about the next hot thing, the next hot thing. And so for me, one of the things we try to focus on is let's not lose sight of what's working. Let's use the data to make decisions, not read the journals to make decisions. So we try to lead them through the data process to make okay, where should my money go, for example? Well, okay, everyone's saying Pinterest is really hot right now and it can generate a lot of traffic, but if we dig into it, it's really not a good ROI. So let's not shift our focus from something that is working like Facebook to Pinterest just because it sounds cool or it's the buzz right now. So I think tempering, look, one, setting good expectations, and two, educating them on why things should be a certain way or what we should invest in versus what other people are saying we should invest in. I think those are the big things. But again, it comes back to conversation. So communication, education, and expectations. If those are right, usually we don't have many challenges with the clients. If those are
So
off, then we have a lot.
one of the things you mentioned earlier this week that I really liked, and I think is a best practice that other people could work on employing a little bit more as well, is instead of just jumping in with a client or anybody who's willing to pay you and then having them force expectations on you that are inappropriate or aren't going to work, is spending more time vetting the relationship at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So really getting to know them. Talk a little bit about how you guys actually go through getting to know a client a little bit before agreeing to sign on. It's not that everybody doesn't want more money, but we talked about the trade-off in the long run is that money for a few months or however long the relationship lasts is often not worth the employee turnover that you may experience from a bad relationship, or the bad publicity and bad word of mouth in the industry that can happen. So talk a little bit about like how you guys do that vetting process.
Yeah, so we kind of treat it like dating. we look at, are we a good fit, and there's a certain level of just instinct in that. If you start dealing with a client and they just can't come across as not a nice, fair, you know, person, then we're probably not going to do business with them, because there are a lot of clients out there that need services, and what we found in the past, if you get one or two bad clients, they end up not only taking up a lot of your time, but also creating a lot of frustration that impacts the time that you're not spending on them, and you become less efficient for the other clients you're working on. So I think making sure that first and foremost, that's someone you want to interact with. It's just like you're selective about your spouse or your friends, your circles of business relationships. I think you should be just as selective about the clients, and if your business doesn't have the luxury of being a little selective, then you might want to evaluate your offerings, because there's so many customers out there that want your services that I think you can afford to be selective. And if you end up taking just anyone that comes along, you'll find that they're not profitable clients anyway, because they burn up so much of your time through frustrating arguments or disagreements or just expectations. So one of the things we do is we have conversations, almost like a dating process, like I said, and then we have documentation where we send out questionnaires where we ask questions like, what would success look like to you? Define it. What are your objectives or goals over the next 12 months? And if those aren't realistic, if someone comes and says, well, I'm making $1,000 a month right now, and I want to make $100,000 a month on online sales within 6 months, and we're going to sit down with them and say, well, help me understand where this goal comes from. And if they can't justify it, first we're going to try to reset their expectations. But if we can't, then we're going to say, you know what, this is not going to work, because we're never going to make you happy. And if we can't make you happy, then ultimately we're going to lose the client. So we've done a good job of that overall. Our client churn is very, very low. We've got clients that have been with us since the beginning, and I talk to agencies that have 25% client churn, and that's just insane to me, because the amount of energy it takes to get new business is just, it's astronomical. So,
and any good client knows that the ramp up that you spend with an agency or with any employee, right? Like anybody that you bring on that's new to the experience, the first few months, nobody's ever going to be able to be 100% productive, because they are not fully they don't fully know everything about either your company, your industry, whatever the situation is. And there are tools out there, and it's one of the things that we're working on in trying to help people really understand the competitive landscape, but it takes time no matter what, right? And so those first few months of investment are completely eaten up if you start a relationship and then have to end it 6 months in, right? Because you probably have never really spooled up to perfect productivity.
Exactly.
And that's always a really big shame. When we were talking earlier, we were joking around about it really is like dating, right? I mean, there's always going to be someone desperate enough to take flack from somebody that's being a jerk. And it's just like in the dating world, it never ends well, right? Because nobody wants a doormat. Nobody wants to just be run over all the time. And it just breeds so many problems. And, working in the SaaS market, I can say that I see that too. And, when we first started out and, when the company was younger, I know that it was easy to say yes to a lot of companies that just weren't a great fit. It didn't mean that they were bad or mean or in any way combative. It just meant what they wanted and what we were building were not exactly the same. And over time, on some occasions they left, and on some occasions we actually said, you know what, we're not sure that we're going to be the best fit for you moving forward. We're more than happy to continue working with you, like we love the business, but we actually don't think you're getting what you need. And feeling confident enough to go have those conversations and to tell people, like, you know what, like, I just don't think this is a relationship that's benefiting everybody involved. Takes some guts. So I like what you said about, evaluating your business model and being able to say, if you feel like you really are just taking on anyone and that you don't have the wherewithal to say, this isn't going to happen, you're probably in the wrong business.
Yeah, and I would challenge those folks that have done that and are in that situation to really sit back and analyze the clients they have taken on against their better judgment, and maybe it's revenue, it's significant for their business, but look at the profit margins. Look at how much time is actually being spent keeping those folks happy. And if you really look at it from a profitability standpoint, 9 out of 10, cutting that fat ends up being better for your business.
And I mean, if you look at it, like, we're not suggesting, I don't think either one of us is suggesting that people today go and fire,
No.
a bunch of clients, right? It's
Right.
what you should be doing is proactively taking steps to bring on clients that are a better fit so that as you can let other clients go, you have the
Right.
power to do so, right? Like, it's an evolution. It takes a while. Most people don't have the luxury to just, go scrap a quarter of their client roster.
Right.
And if you did, you probably didn't take those clients in the first place, right? If you had that kind of luxury anyway.
That's right.
So speaking of, like, people having weird expectations and things, right now, what are you seeing? It doesn't have to be client related, but what are you seeing as, like, some of the biggest mistakes people are making in digital marketing just in general?
Yeah, I think bandwagon jumping is the biggest thing I see, in people jumping on a bandwagon without fully understanding what it is. And so, content marketing to me isn't a tactic. It's the cornerstone of your digital marketing strategy, right? You need to have great content across every channel that you're marketing on. And I don't think people get that. I think they feel like they can go and get a $10 an hour intern to write really shallow content and just slap it up on their website, and their content marketing. And really taking the time to get that ingrained across the entire business, get every facet of your business to understand the importance of publishing content, things like this podcast, or blog posts or journals or white papers or whatever, making that all integrated into a single cohesive strategy, but making sure you have resources that are the right resources to do it. One, they know what they're talking about, but two, they can write or appear on video, whatever it is they're doing. So a lot of people will find a maven of their subject, but they can't write. They don't know how to communicate. So you end up with this very vanilla or archaic kind of structure that people don't want to consume. The message is there, it's just they're not getting it because of the way it's structured. Or the opposite, where it may be written with some flair or pizzazz, but there's no substance to it. So I think that blend of writing really well and having the substance that is going to appeal to your core audience, I think that's where most people are missing the boat. And I don't think it's on the agency or it's on the client, in terms of responsibility. I think it's a collaboration. And a lot of agencies are still stuck in that mindset of, here's a client, here's the agency, it's a vendor-client relationship. Whereas I think the agencies that are really succeeding, they approach it more as a partnership, where the agency is an extension of the client's marketing team. So they work collaboratively on brainstorming, they work collaboratively on producing that work, that content, things like that.
That's, the bandwagon thing is really true, and I think that where you bring up that it's really important to have this partnership as opposed to, slave and master or vendor, vendor-client rapport, is that when somebody calls up and says, I really want to be on Pinterest, to your point earlier, or like, let's join, social media XYZ thing of the week. Having a partnership means everybody feels comfortable, responding back and saying, I don't think that, this is actually, let me look into this, I'll do some research, and coming back and making a real recommendation, as opposed to turning around and saying, okay, sure, like, by tomorrow I'll have you a proposal for Pinterest and we're just going to do it. And it's like, we're spending your money, right? So I think that one of the things I've seen be really successful is if you treat the client's money like your own money. Right?
Absolutely.
So, like, you treat it like it's your own wallet. Like, would you spend money on Pinterest? Like, if it was your business?
Right.
Maybe not, and if you would, you have to stop spending money somewhere else, right? Because it's a finite amount of dollars usually. So you have to figure out allocation-wise what really makes sense. And I think that having that real partnership and being an extension works both ways. Clients need to respect the agency enough to, like, take the feedback appropriately when it comes back and not force them to do things that they're recommending strongly against. And agencies need to be conscientious about spending someone's money because at the end of the day, it's a reflection on them as well.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And we try to teach our folks that that thought process, that you're an advocate for the client, and we want to do stuff that's in their long-term best interest. You know, it's really easy to say, okay, this new channel or this new opportunity is here, and we're curious folks in marketing, right? We want to see if it works. So there's an element of we want to test it, but doing it in a way that's being a good steward of their money, and making sure that you're not doing it in a reckless way. That this is a mistake I see a lot, where folks they shift their budget from what's working to the fad, so they're missing out on something that has been working consistently for some time, but they just turn it off because they want to try this new thing. So I think there's a balance, right? You want to always try new innovative things, because otherwise you wouldn't ever learn, you wouldn't find the next big thing. But to do it in a way that's been a good steward and is responsible, you know, and doing it as if it were yourself, your own money, like you said.
Yeah, that's it. It really is such a challenge, and I actually think, because we're unfortunately out of time, we actually should dive into this a little bit more. There's some really interesting points about kind of content creation, and one of the things I would really love to get in with you guys at Fuel is a conversation around content throughout different stages of the funnel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that's a very traditionally, people are talking about it, but what's weird is everybody keeps talking about it and people keep doing it wrong. So I'm failing to see like where the rubber is not meeting the road on, social media doesn't just have to be at the top of the funnel. White papers don't just have to be at the bottom of the funnel. Video spans a bunch of different parts of the funnel. So let's try to get on the same page as to content being created, and good, rich content, and how that really can be leveraged throughout a customer's journey. And I'd love to hear the perspective from you guys in kind of a hospitality area, because you'll have a really different viewpoint than maybe some B2B people. We work with a bunch of e-commerce folks, so I would say that you guys may have a more similar journey to them. But it'd be great to touch on that. So we'll have to wrap on that next time. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining, Stuart.
That sounds good. Yeah, I have a lot of insight.
I'm really excited to kind of continue that conversation. Blog post is going to be up on GinzaMetrics.com/blog, so we'll post it there. You can always tweet to us at #FoundFriday if you have topic ideas or want to learn more, and the video is available on the GinzaMetrics YouTube channel at the end, so we hope to see you guys next time.